What's up guys, Rogue9 here, and today we're taking a closer look at the elite kits in Battlefield 1. How strong is their armour, how effective are their weapons against infantry or vehicles, and most importantly, which kit is the best? Let's find out. As always, let's kick the video off by taking a look at the percentage share of the aggregated usage time for each class, although of course in the case of elite kits, players don't really have a lot of choice about which kit they play. It's more down to which kit is available on the map you're currently playing and which one can you get your hands on. So in this case, I don't really think that the usage time is a valid representation of player preference, but let's take a look nonetheless. As of the 29th of June 2017, you can see that, unsurprisingly, the MG 0815 or MG 0815 is used for the greatest percentage of time, and that makes sense since this is probably one of the most common kits you'll find in the game. What is surprising to me though is that the Villar Perosa Sentry kit is the second most used in terms of the time spent, and that despite being available only on a single map when playing Conquest. I don't play the other game modes quite as often, so I'm not sure if the usage time maybe comes from one of those. If you have a theory as to how or why the Villar Perosa ends up with such a high usage, feel free to share it in the comments below. The next most used kit is the Flamethrower Kit, and right at the bottom of the usage time list is the Tank Hunter. Sadly, for some reason the new French elite class, the Trench Raider, is not currently being covered by Battlefield Tracker, so we'll have to do without those stats. And now, since these kits are so unique in their capability, there's no real point in comparing them a lot of the time. I mean, we're definitely in the realm of apples to oranges here, so instead, the next part of the video will be structured as follows. First, we'll explore each kit's capabilities against vehicles, then against infantry, and finally we'll take a look at the armour that each unit is wearing, as well as any vulnerabilities they have. So vehicles first, and for the two Sentries, the MG 0815 and the Villar Perosa, as well as the Trench Raider, this segment is really easy. They do no damage whatsoever to vehicles of any type with the exception of horses. A swipe from the Trench Raiders Club does 17 points of damage to a horse, so not very effective. At close range, the MG 0815 does 3 to 4 points of damage for a body shot, and 6 to 7 points of damage for each headshot, again not all that effective. There are no horses on Montegrappa, so having the damage for the Villar Perosa against horses is irrelevant. But with those three out of the way, let's move on to a more interesting weapon when it comes to damaging vehicles, the Flametrooper's Vexilar apparat, or Vex. This flamethrower has a wind-up time of 0.5 seconds and then another 0.5 seconds while the flame grows to its full length, and this is then followed by a burn time of 10.5 seconds before the weapon needs to cool down again. During its 10.5 second burn time, the Vex can do 36 points of damage to heavy tanks, 45 to 46 points of damage to the light tank and armoured truck, and 52 points of damage to armoured cars. Damage to open-topped cars, motorbikes and horses is higher, but since the passengers are exposed, the main danger is really being set on fire rather than the vehicle being destroyed. So the summary of the Vex is that while it can damage vehicles, it's rather impractical. Destroying one of the tanks would take more than half a minute, and even lighter armoured vehicles would take more than 20 seconds of continuous burn time. And you'd really need to come up against an unbelievably passive opponent to be able to destroy a vehicle on your own. And now, while these tidbits of information may be interesting, the really important stats in this category are for the Tank Hunter, of course. Armed with the T-Gewehr M1918, also known as the T-Gewehr, the Tank Hunter has a fire rate of 18 shots per minute and at a range of up to 40 meters can do between 25 and 27 points of damage against heavy tanks, as long as they're struck more or less perpendicular. Striking an armored target at a sharp angle will decrease the damage done by each shot, but interestingly, the area of the tank you hit plays almost no role at all. With all three types of heavy tanks, I always experienced the same damage sequence. The first shot would do 25 points of damage, then 27, then 26, then destruction. If the vehicle completes a repair cycle in between, the sequence restarts from the beginning. Damage to the armoured trucks is also very straightforward. The vertical sides and back take a consistent 38 points of damage with each shot, while the somewhat angled front can take a little less damage depending on where you aim, but still takes at least 35 points as long as the vehicle is not angled. The maximum damage to armoured cars is 55 points per hit. With the FT-17 light tank though, things are once again a little more complicated. As I discovered in my tests of the assault class gadgets, the turret of the light tank is armoured just like any of the heavy tanks, which means that the T-Gewehr will do between 25 and 27 points of damage. The chassis of the tank has armour that is more similar to the armoured truck, and it will take 35 points of damage on the sides and 38 points on the front. And finally, as you will hopefully already be aware of by now, the worst place to target the FT-17 is the plate at the back of the tank. Here, your tank hunter shots will only do about 21 points of damage. As you would expect, the lighter vehicles take even more damage. For instance, motorbikes are destroyed in one shot. Horses take 60 points of damage from shots to the body and instantly die from headshots. So let's summarize all of this quickly in terms of number of shots to kill. As long as you hit your targets at a near 90-degree angle, heavy tanks will take 4 shots at distances up to 60 meters and 5 at distances beyond that. The same goes for the FT-17 turret. Armored trucks will take 3 shots up to 80 meters and 4 beyond that, and the same goes for the FT-17 chassis. And if you do decide to go for the stabilizing plate at the back of the light tank, you will need 5 shots up to 65 meters distance and 6 shots beyond that. And the obvious takeaway here is do not shoot this plate. If you need to shoot a light tank from behind, you can go for the turret, or better still, aim at the tracks. This will count as a chassis strike. But enough of vehicles now. Apart from the tank hunter, all of the elite kits are intended as heavy, close-ranged assault troops for use against enemy infantry. So let's take a closer look at how their weapons perform in this role. Again here, there's not really much to say about the Trench Raider. His medieval club can instantly kill any opponent that gets within arm's length, and it can be swung at a rate of 75 strikes per minute. Another elite kit with severely limited range is the Flametrooper. What is that? I don't know, about 15 meters maybe? But once you do get within this range and get the flamethrower going, it is a devastating weapon. Any enemy touched by the flames is basically dead, although the fire itself only causes 10 points of damage every half a second. For maximum efficiency, you need to keep aiming your flames at the opponent, and the resulting 0.65 seconds to kill translates roughly into a damage rate of around 150 points per second. And as impressive as 150 DPS sounds, a time to kill of 0.65 seconds is really not that great, and that's without factoring in the full second it takes for your flamethrower to get going. The T-Gewehr is practically useless at close ranges since you cannot fire it from the hip or the shoulder, but if you spot an enemy at greater range, the gun's projectile fired at 780 meters per second will do 180 damage up to 40 meters, dropping down to 160 damage at 100 meters. And this of course will always result in an instant kill. At close range, you will have to fall back on your sawn-off double-barreled shotgun, which can protect you against 1 or 2 enemies, but if an enemy squad manages to catch you in an isolated position, you don't really stand much of a chance. And last but not least, we have the 2 Sentries, and these are probably the most comparable out of all of the elite kits. The Villar Perosa does between 23 points of maximum damage, dropping off to a minimum of 12 points at a fire rate of 900 RPM with a capacity of 25 shots and a muzzle velocity of 380 meters per second. And if these stats look familiar, there's a good reason for that. The Villar Perosa was initially designed as an aircraft-mounted gun, and when it became obsolete in its role due to technological advancements, the excess stock was simply handed over to the infantry. But of course, without proper grips, much less a stock, the gun was not really suited to an infantry role either. To make it more useful in its new role, Beretta chopped the Villar Perosa in half and gave it a wooden stock, thereby creating the Automatico M1918, which explains why all of these stats are matched 1 for 1 by the Automatico variants represented in the game. The reload time of the Villar Perosa is slightly slower, which makes sense given that you have to deal with 2 magazines, and the recoil is slightly different, but apart from that you're basically carrying 2 automaticos which you can fire at the same time. Compare this to the MG0815 stats and it becomes easy to see who the winner is, at least at short ranges. The MG has the same max damage with slightly higher minimum damage, much slower fire rate, much greater capacity, much greater bullet velocity, better recoil, and similar reload time, at least from empty. At first glance, this might seem as if each of the guns has strengths and weaknesses, but we have to remember that the Villar Perosa shoots 2 bullets at the same time, effectively doubling its damage. Its theoretical time to kill up to 22 meters, not accounting for bullet travel time, is only 133 milliseconds, and up to 38 meters it's only 200 milliseconds. You can absolutely shred enemies with this gun. The MG0815's theoretical time to kill of 558 milliseconds up to 30 meters and 698 milliseconds beyond that is comparable with the 650 milliseconds of the Vex, and with these guys you're much more reliant on your character's armour to survive. So with these stats in mind, I have to say that the Villar Perosa Sentry is 100% my favourite pick for taking on enemy infantry at close range, and it's a real shame, or maybe it's a blessing, that we don't get to see it all that often. While playing as a Villar Perosa Sentry is great fun, coming up against one on the enemy team maybe not quite so much. And now onto the final part of the video, elite class health and vulnerabilities. But first, it is once again time for a quick news bulletin.
News from the front is improving. First telegrams from Russian High Command have recently arrived with details of their forces, and it looks as if they will be bringing a lot of new and exciting weapons to the battlefield. Their arrival is greatly anticipated, although it seems as if our troops may have to conquer the trenches at Nivelle and the village of Dahure first. In addition to news of the Russians, it is my great pleasure to announce that the recent switch from carrier pigeons to Discord, link also below, has greatly facilitated communications between the troops of the Rogue 9 Company. Both the 1st and 2nd platoons have now been fully staffed, and as yet there are no reported casualties. Further volunteers are more than welcome, so if you are playing on a personal computer and not yet part of the Rogue 9 Company, search for the Rogues Rangers platoon now and sign up. Rogues Raiders and Rogues Roughnecks have already gotten stuck in, and now it's time for the Rangers. Make your mark on history. Join one of the most formidable fighting forces on the battlefield by visiting your nearest recruiting station today and searching for Rogues Rangers.
The additional armour of the elite classes is simulated in the game by adding a damage modifier that decreases the effectiveness of each bullet that hits the elite by a set percentage. The Trench Raider, Flametrooper and Sentries each have full body armour offering all-round protection, and according to my tests, the damage of each bullet that strikes them is reduced by around 82.5%, plus or minus 1 point of damage depending on the rounding. The Tank Hunter is the only exception here and takes twice as much damage as the other elite classes, giving him a damage reduction of around 65% compared to regular infantry. The movement speed of the Tank Hunter is also slightly faster than most of the other elites. According to my tests, the Tank Hunter moves around 85% of the speed of regular infantry, while the Sentries and Flametrooper only move at around 80% regular speed. The exception here is the Trench Raider, who can actually sprint around 11.2% faster than regular soldiers, which makes sense from a balancing perspective given that his main weapon is a club. In addition to their resilience against bullets, the elites also have various invulnerabilities to other forms of damage. The Flametrooper is king here, being invulnerable to flames, gas, and even being able to survive frag grenades, although this comes at the cost of a more limited vision by default. Credit for the discovery of the grenade survivability goes to Doom49, and I'll link his video at the end if you want to go and check that out. The Tank Hunter and Trench Raider can also survive gas attacks, but with the Trench Raider you have to put on a separate mask like with every other soldier. The two sentry types are the weakest here, since both are extremely vulnerable to flames and especially gas, despite also having a limited view much like the Flametrooper. The only advantage they have over the other elites is that they are completely invulnerable to standard melee strikes. Only backstabs and bayonet charges can take these guys down. So there we have it, you now know all the details of the elite class's capabilities against vehicles, infantry, as well as their defensive strengths and weaknesses. As I've already hinted at, the Villar Perosa Sentry is, in my opinion, certainly the best armed unit for dealing with infantry at close ranges, while at longer ranges or against vehicles, the Tank Hunter is my number one. But that's just my opinion. Before I wrap up, I want to share one last stat with you. On battlefieldtracker.com, you can look up both the percentage of time spent for the 4 main elite classes, as well as the percentage of kills that they have, and if we divide the percentage of kills by the percentage of time spent, we can actually calculate an efficiency ratio for each elite class. A result of 1 means that the class gets as many kills as would be expected, while results below 1 are less kills than expected, and more means more kills in the same time compared to the other classes. If we look at the efficiency ratios of the 4 elite classes, we can see that head and shoulders above the competition is indeed the Villar Perosa Sentry, while the MG0815 and Flametrooper are slightly below average, and the Tank Hunter gets by far the least kills in the same amount of time. For the Tank Hunter, this makes sense, since it probably spends most of its time fighting other vehicles, which may take longer to defeat and might only yield 1 kill at the end, if even that. Having a low kill efficiency ratio doesn't mean that the Tank Hunter is bad, it just fulfills a different role on the team, one that is nevertheless quite valuable. For the other 3 infantry-focused classes though, the ratios should be a fairly good representation at how effective each one is at getting kills, and this offers us just one more objectively measurable stat to help us rank the 3 of them. And that's it. Feel free to share your thoughts on the elite classes in the comments below. Which one do you like most? Which one maybe needs a nerf or a buff? And as always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next episode.